Oh, Vhagar, my darling dragon. I guess fans are obsessing over this 180-year-old dragon more than any Targaryen or Hightower, and rightly so. George R.R. Martin described Vhagar among the other dragons as huge and ancient and sleepy, but still terrifying when she woke and stirred and spread her wings. Yep, that's how goddamn powerful Vhagar was during the events of the Dance of the Dragons, and she had battle experience dating back to Aegon's Conquest, where she helped destroy the Arryn fleet and fought in several later campaigns. By the time we enter Season 3 of the show, Vhagar had already killed Prince Lucerys and his dragon Arrax, and Princess Rhaenys and her dragon Meleys, but here's the catch. Many fans believe that Vhagar and her rider Aemond alone might not have been able to take Meleys down, especially since Fire and Blood states that Meleys might have stood a chance against Vhagar alone. But why? I mean, Vhagar is gigantic, and the chronicles establish her as the queen of all dragons and claim that a horse could be ridden down her gullet. And that's where it gets tricky, because Vhagar might be nearly undefeatable due to her size and experience, but in the right circumstances, there are a few other dragons who could overpower Vhagar. I know it sounds unbelievable, but hear me out. Let me start with one I already briefly mentioned. Also known as the Red Queen for her beautiful scarlet scales, Meleys was already rideable by 75 AC. That made her at least several decades old when she died, while Vhagar was more than a century older than her. However, Meleys had a major advantage. The she-dragon, with a distinct bright copper crest, horns, and claws, was first claimed by Princess Alyssa Targaryen. After her death, Princess Rhaenys managed to claim Meleys, and the dragon was known for being the fastest in Westeros. Yes, Meleys might have been younger and smaller than Vhagar, but in her prime, she could easily outpace both Vhagar and Caraxes. In the show, we see Meleys being ridden by Rhaenys during King Aegon Targaryen's coronation, where her escape through the dragon pit floor killed and injured members of the crowd. Though the book doesn't establish Meleys taking part in any major battle before Rook's Rest, Rhaenys calls her a war dragon in the show. Now, even if I don't get into this debate, I believe Meleys could have challenged Vhagar, or at least fled from her, so what really happened in the Battle of Rook's Rest? Rhaenys decided to fight for Rhaenyra and flew on Meleys to Rook's Rest, where the Greens were attacking. She repeatedly attacked the battlefield with her fiery breath, creating major panic among the Green forces and heavy casualties. Even when Aegon and Sunfire joined the Greens, Meleys was clearly getting the upper hand against them. The two dragons brutally attacked one another, and Meleys clamped her jaws around Sunfire's wing in the show. Sunfire also bit Meleys and damaged one of her horns, but during this aerial fight, you could clearly see how agile Meleys really was. But when Aemond entered the fray with Vhagar, the balance tipped. On Aemond's command, Vhagar blasted fire at both Sunfire and Meleys, and while the former plummeted down, Meleys still held her own. She went up against Vhagar and even slashed at her underside with her claws as they locked talons and blasted each other with flame. The two dragons then spiraled towards the ground, but Meleys recovered and managed to return to the sky while Vhagar struck the ground. You get the gist, right? Her being smaller and swifter than Vhagar gave her a huge advantage. Sadly, Vhagar later ambushed her by emerging from behind Rook's Rest and tightly clamped her jaws around the Red Queen's neck. Whether Aemond devised this exact plan because he believed Meleys could overpower Vhagar is never confirmed, but the ambush prevented Meleys from making full use of her speed and maneuverability. Allow me to explain exactly why I think Meleys could have won under the right circumstances. If you look closely at the fight between her and Vhagar, you'll notice that she dives around and beneath the larger dragon in an attempt to gain a better position. If she had successfully moved above and behind Vhagar during their eventual clash, she would have gained a major tactical advantage. In aerial combat, being above or behind your opponent provides greater control of the engagement. Moreover, Vhagar's huge size and consequent turning radius could become a drawback against Meleys. That's exactly why a surprise attack was so effective, but if Meleys had avoided that strike, Vhagar might have become more vulnerable because she needed time and space to turn her enormous body around for another pass. No, we're not fat-shaming Vhagar, I'm just saying that by the time she could have turned fully, Meleys might have slipped past her, and Rhaenys could have attacked Aemond before he got a chance to react. Also, she could have targeted Vhagar's wings and attempted to exhaust her with repeated attacks, but honestly, killing or dismounting Aemond might have been enough to decide the fate of the battle, because without her rider directing her, Vhagar would no longer have been fighting as part of the Green's coordinated attack. At that point, Meleys could have disengaged and flown away from the much slower Vhagar. And you want to know what the craziest part is? Meleys almost escaped the final strike. When Vhagar emerged and aimed for her neck, Meleys had very little time to react. If she had spotted Vhagar even a second or two earlier, she might have escaped completely. Then again, I know many fans believe that Vhagar is almost impossible to defeat, especially because the show portrays her as an expert at sudden, devastating ambushes. Balerion, the Black Dread. Intriguingly, before Princess Alyssa mounted Meleys, she wanted to claim Balerion the Black Dread, who was originally the dragon of King Aegon Targaryen I. She wanted to ride him, but her parents and the Dragon Keepers considered Balerion too old and slow for the young princess. Yes, Balerion the Black Dread was older than Vhagar and was born in Valyria before the Doom. Before Vhagar stole the spotlight as the main Targaryen dragon, Balerion was the largest in Westeros and was even bigger than Vhagar. He was known for his black scales and wings, and even breathed black fire, sometimes with red swirls in it. It's said that Balerion's fire could melt steel and stone and fuse sand into glass. His wingspan was so large that Balerion's shadow could swallow entire towns. His teeth were as long as swords, and his jaws, oh boy, they were big enough to swallow a mammoth whole, according to the stories associated with his enormous skull. Coming to his age, he was almost as old as the Targaryen dynasty's presence on Dragonstone. Balerion was one of the 5 dragons brought to Dragonstone by Aenar Targaryen's family before the Doom of Valyria. After the deaths of the other dragons, Balerion became the last living creature known to have seen the Valyrian freehold before its destruction. He was later claimed by Aegon I, and as his dragon Balerion flew into several battles, he helped burn a Volantene fleet before the Conquest, and when Aegon decided to conquer the 7 kingdoms, he took Balerion into battle against the forces of Lords Darklyn and Mooten. After the Ironborn won at the Wailing Willows, Balerion burned the victors, and after that, Aegon took him to Harrenhal, which bore the darkest proof of Balerion's power. When Harren the Black refused to yield, Aegon took Balerion high into the sky and descended inside the castle walls, setting the new castle on fire. Balerion's dragonfire was so dangerous that the towers of Harrenhal burned, cracked, and melted into the twisted shapes they retained forever. The point is, if House Targaryen ever had a truly formidable war dragon, it was Balerion the Black Dread. It's said that his fire helped forge the Iron Throne by melting the swords of Aegon's defeated enemies. At times, even the mere sight of Balerion helped prevent an uprising. After Aegon I, his son, Maegor, claimed Balerion, and then Princess Aeria Targaryen mounted him. By the time Prince Viserys claimed Balerion, he was so old and heavy that the dragon struggled to take to the sky. The two flew around King's Landing, but Viserys believed Balerion no longer had the strength to fly to Dragonstone. After returning from his mysterious journey with Aeria, Balerion was eventually housed in the Dragon Pit. Aeria had been unable to control where he took her, and many believed Balerion returned to Valyria during their disappearance. Balerion died in 94 AC due to old age, but in earlier years, he had flown beside Vhagar during Aegon's conquest. I guess Balerion's description and history alone screamed that Vhagar, in her younger years, was no match for him, and if the dragons could talk amongst themselves, I'm sure they regarded Balerion as their king. Now, if we consider a hypothetical situation where Vhagar during the dance fought Balerion in his prime, their sizes wouldn't be separated by an enormous margin, because Vhagar was said to have grown almost as large as Balerion had been at his death. However, a prime Balerion still would have possessed exceptional size, strength, and destructive firepower without suffering from the extreme age and weakness that marked his final years. In that situation, Balerion would probably have been the victor. Meraxes. There's a very surprising account given by Tyrion Lannister in Chapter 13 of A Game of Thrones. When he came to King's Landing for Cersei and Robert Baratheon's wedding, he managed to find the dragon skulls that had been kept in the Red Keep's cellars. It was there that he found the skulls of Balerion the Black Dread, Vhagar, and Meraxes, the 3 dragons who participated in Aegon's conquest. Vhagar was flown by Aegon's sister wife, Queen Visenya, while his other sister wife, Queen Rhaenys Targaryen rode Meraxes. Now, if we believe Tyrion's observations, then Meraxes was even bigger than Vhagar's skull at the time of their respective deaths. In Martin's words, Tyrion had stood between their gaping jaws, wordless and awed. You could have ridden a horse down Vhagar's gullet, although you wouldn't have ridden it out again. Meraxes was even bigger. Let's say this observation accurately reflects their sizes, then yeah, Meraxes might have been capable of defeating a younger Vhagar. But I did mention that the larger size of a dragon doesn't always translate directly into victory in an aerial melee. Meraxes was likely older than Vhagar and younger than Balerion, although her exact age is unknown. During the Conquest, Meraxes appears to have been large enough to outmatch Vhagar in size without necessarily being as aged or sluggish as Vhagar became during the dance. Even if she was older, she had to be younger than Balerion because he was the oldest and largest of the Conqueror's dragons. Let's say Meraxes was a couple of decades older than Vhagar. That still could have given her an advantage against the younger Vhagar of the Conquest. Thus, in this case, Meraxes' possible size and maturity could have made her mightier than Vhagar at that point, when Vhagar was the youngest of the three Conqueror's dragons and still had more growing to do. On top of that, if we bring in the bond between a dragon and his or her rider, Rhaenys was the only known rider of Meraxes, and it's said that she loved flying on her dragon so much that she spent more time on dragonback than Visenya and Aegon combined. Apparently, she even intended to fly Meraxes across the Sunset Sea to discover what lay beyond the western shores. Moreover, during the Conquest, Rhaenys and Meraxes participated in several campaigns. It thus makes sense that Rhaenys knew how to handle her dragon in difficult situations and how to use Meraxes to her advantage. Their bond ended tragically when Meraxes was hit in the eye by an iron bolt fired from a scorpion in Dorne in 10 AC. Meraxes fell from the sky and died, while Rhaenys was also believed to have died either during the fall or shortly thereafter. Vermithor. Oh boy, we've got a real competitor here. I mean, there's a reason he was called the Bronze Fury. Hatched in 34 AC, Vermithor was already a large dragon by 48 AC and was smaller than only Vhagar and Balerion among the living Targaryen dragons of that period. Vermithor happened to be one of the dragons present when King Aenys Targaryen's funeral pyre was lit, along with Silverwing and Quicksilver. By 48 AC, he had accepted Prince Jaehaerys as his rider, while the younger prince made his claim to the Iron Throne. Sometime later, Jaehaerys flew upon Vermithor to King's Landing and brought Rhaegar Baratheon, the Lord of Storm's End, to where Vermithor was feeding, reminding him what dragon power meant. Once the dragon pit was completed, Vermithor didn't live there permanently. Instead, he and Silverwing often remained close to their riders at the Red Keep or accompanied them during their travels. In the show, Vermithor is one of the largest living dragons, second only to Vhagar among the dragons whose sizes have been clearly established. He would later fight in the first and second battles of Tumbleton after Hugh Hammer claimed him and flew him alongside Silverwing, unleashing their dragon fire. In the second battle, Hugh was killed before he could mount Vermithor. Riderless and enraged, Vermithor entered the fray. Several men attempted to attack him while he was grounded, and he killed many of them before joining the wider dragon battle. If Vhagar and Vermithor were to have a one-on-one duel, the likely answer is that Vhagar would initially be the favorite. However, Vermithor was almost 80 years younger than Vhagar and was still an enormous dragon. I guess it's pretty clear by now that greater size and age don't always go hand in hand as advantages for dragons. Extreme age can also bring reduced speed, slower maneuvering, and exhaustion. It's only due to these factors that Vermithor might prove capable of overpowering Vhagar under the right circumstances. Now, you may ask, Vhagar is way more experienced than Vermithor, and shouldn't that be her advantage? And yeah, the more time dragons spend fighting battles, the greater their experience with warfare may be, and the higher their chances of responding effectively. But Vhagar was already extremely old during the Dance of the Dragons, and could sometimes be difficult for Aemond to control. In fact, the show gave us an example when Aemond failed to stop Vhagar after Arrax attacked her, resulting in Lucerys Valerion's death. However, Vermithor accepting Hugh Hammer does not automatically prove that Hugh had a deeper understanding or better control of his dragon than Aemond had over Vhagar. Hugh was an inexperienced rider, while Aemond had ridden Vhagar for years. The bottom line is that Vhagar versus Vermithor would have been a dangerous battle. Vhagar would have had the advantages of size and combat experience, while Vermithor would have had greater youth and possibly better stamina. Sadly, in the book, Vermithor died during the chaotic Second Battle of Tumbleton after fighting Seasmoke and Tessarion. He killed Seasmoke, but his wounds proved fatal, and Tessarion was also mortally injured. Caraxes. Many book readers argue that Caraxes proved himself capable of killing Vhagar, although their battle also cost Caraxes his own life. We don't know exactly when Caraxes was born, but by 72 AC he was of rideable size. The son of Jaehaerys Targaryen I, Prince Aemond Targaryen, the heir to the throne, first claimed Caraxes. The Dragon Keepers considered Caraxes the fiercest among the young dragons in the Dragon Pit, and that's how he got the nickname the Blood Wyrm, and as Aemond's dragon, Caraxes fought in the Fourth Dornish War in 83 AC. After Aemond died, his nephew, Daemon Targaryen, claimed Caraxes and used him extensively in the War for the Stepstones. Trained through years of battles, the huge red dragon was incredibly formidable. He was said to be about half Vhagar's size and had a leaner, more agile body, which gave him an edge in maneuverability. Moreover, even though Caraxes was also an older dragon by the time of the dance, he was aggressive, battle-tested, and paired with one of the most experienced dragon riders alive. As a result, when Aemond and Vhagar faced Daemon and Caraxes above the God's Eye, the two dragons fought fiercely. Caraxes slammed into Vhagar from above, and Daemon leapt from his saddle to attack Aemond. Vhagar's claws opened Caraxes' belly and tore off one of his wings, but Caraxes still had enough strength to lock his jaws onto Vhagar's throat. The dragons crashed into the God's Eye together. Vhagar died during the impact and was later found on the lake bed. Caraxes survived the initial crash long enough to pull himself from the water and crawl towards Harrenhal, but he died outside the castle walls. Yeah, Caraxes too died from the fight, but he lived for at least a short time after Vhagar's death, which tells you just how goddamn tough he was. However, this doesn't establish that Caraxes was universally more powerful. His victory depended on Daemon's plan, his attack from above, his speed, and his willingness to accept a mutually fatal battle. Cannibal. Like Sheepstealer, the Cannibal was a wild dragon and justified his name because guess what he feasted on? Other dragons. The Cannibal was said to be the largest and oldest of the three completely wild dragons living on Dragonstone, the others being Sheepstealer and Grey Ghost. He was known for attacking smaller dragons and eating dead dragons, newborn dragons, and dragon eggs. Some small folk claimed that the Cannibal had lived on the island even before the Targaryens arrived on Dragonstone before the Doom. That would make him older than Vhagar and possibly even Balerion, but this was only a local legend, which was disputed by the Maesters. Moreover, it is sometimes theorized that the Cannibal came from a different lineage of dragons, which might explain his hostility towards the Targaryen dragons. However, this has never been confirmed in canon. Though these claims have been disputed, we know one thing for sure: the Cannibal was horrifying. He was a wild dragon, and Sheepstealer has already shown us how difficult and unpredictable an unclaimed dragon can be. Before the Dance of the Dragons, would-be dragon tamers attempted to approach the Cannibal, and the result was his lair being filled with their bones. Even when Jaehaerys called for new dragon riders in 129 AC, no successful attempt was made to claim the Cannibal because of his terrifying reputation. Men who entered or disturbed his lair were unlikely to return. So if this dragon, who was clearly a beast personified, were to go against Vhagar, the result would be impossible to predict. Cannibal's size is never directly compared with Vhagar's, and he has no confirmed experience fighting a dragon anywhere near Vhagar's size. However, he would have been dangerous and aggressive because he survived without riders, dragon keepers, or regular feedings. A wild dragon like Cannibal knew how to hunt, defend his territory, and survive without human protection. Those survival instincts could make him an unpredictable apex predator against a trained war dragon, even one as powerful as Vhagar. On the other hand, Vhagar's greater confirmed size and vast battle experience might still make her the favorite. Fans have long anticipated Cannibal's possible appearance in House of the Dragon because showrunner Ryan Condal said before the series began that viewers would see around 17 dragons at the height of the story. However, that statement did not confirm that Cannibal would appear, nor did it mean that the 17th unrevealed dragon had to be him. As of June 30th, 2026, Cannibal's inclusion in the TV series has not been officially confirmed. And that brings us to the end of our list for today. For many fans, Vhagar is the undisputed ruler among all the living dragons during the events of the Dance of the Dragons, but we've tried to paint an alternate what-if picture and explore the circumstances under which these 6 dragons could challenge or even overpower her. We hope you enjoyed this video as much as we enjoyed making it, and to the Vhagar fans out there, we didn't mean to rile you up. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and we'll see ya in the next one. Bye for now.